Ndị Igbo mma mmanụ anyị na-ekene onye ọbụla ma nwoke na nwaanyị na-asị unu nnọọ n'obi ndị nke dị na Atlanta Omega Studio International ebe anyị si erute unu. Nke a bụ nnọkọ anyị nke mbụ n'afọ ọfụ 2016, ya bụ na anyị na-asịkwa onye ọbụla nnọọ nke abụọ. Taa anyị bịa ka anyị nọnyere unu ka anyị kwuo ife gbasara ife merụ mgbe ochie nke a na-akpọ history, nke gbasara ndị Igbo na Biafra. Enwere m ndị ọbịa pụrụ iche, ndị dị elu were anya afafụ ndị nọ mgbe ife mere na Biafra. Ya mere eji wee dị mkpa na onye ọbụla ga-ege anyị ntị, biko na ife anyị akpata dị mkpa. Onye nọ m n'aka nri bụ Dr. Ernest Nwaeke. Dr. biko kọwalụ ndị Igbo onye bụ.
Aha m Ernest Nwaeke Gbazuagu, if you like. Nwawo an aerospace engineer and awukumu a mechanical engineer. Ebidoro m nkuzi na Nsụka in 1976. Akanna na akunya makita ngwa ka ọ dị.
No, daalụ rinne. Onye nọkwanụ m n'aka ekpe bụ Barrister Unoaku Ekwegbalu.
Ndị be anyị daalụnụ. Mụnwa bụ Unoaku Ekwegbalu. Abụ m onye nta akụkọ, bụrụkwa barrister maọbụ ndị ọkaiwu ma asịrị ya na nke be anyị. Ya mana ihe a na-etu m bụ Igbo Chinyere ọra. Ihe nnọnị alụgo m ọrụ oyibo wee lụsịa, mana kịta ihe enwere m NGO a na-akpọ Nation Builders Foundation. Ihe anyị na-eme ebe a bụ ikpokọba ndị be anyị ka ha sonye n'ọchịchị, maka na onye sonye n'ọchịchị ọ bụrụ onye kwuo uche, ọ bụrụ na eweta ego na be unu, unu amara ife eji ya bụ ego eme, ma ọ na-etinyekwu ya n'ebe ekwesịrị ka etinye, unu amara ife dị unu mkpa, sobie unu sogidie wee nweta ya. Na agbakọ anyụkọ mamịrị ọnụ, ndị be anyị si na ọ na-agba ụfụfụ. Ọnya ka anyị si ka anyị bịa kwuo maka ya, wee kwukwue maka ihe mere oge gara aga nke a na-akpọ Spirit of Biafra. Kedu ihe butere elu, kedu ndụ erukwa tata.
No, daalụ rinne. Onye nọ n'isi oche n'aka ekpe m bụ onye unu maara, ma ọ na-abụ onye ọbịa m mgbe na mgbe, Ojomma ndị Igbo. Biko kene ndị Igbo.
Obinyọkụ ndewo ndị Igbo nọ n'ụwa niile. Ana m asị unu Happy New Year. Aha m bụ Henry Ojomma Okekuku. Abụ m onye ikwu anọ na Abia steeti. Akwụkwa m community leader na Atlanta. Kemgbe 90s m batara obodo a, ana m na-agara ndị Igbo ozi, ọ ya mere eji mata onye mbụ. Ebe ọ bụla ikwuru okwu Ojomma, asị gị na ama onye ọ bụ, maka na ana m agara ndị Igbo ozi na-agasi ike. So ana m asị ya dịrị onye ọ bụla mma.
Ndewo. No. For the benefit of those of our audience who do not understand the Igbo language very well, I want to say thank you for joining us this morning, or this afternoon rather, at Omega Studio International here in Atlanta. This is our first broadcast from the studio this new year 2016, and once again we thank you for sticking with us and joining us. We have a very interesting package that we are going to talk about today. If you have listened, we have two outstanding individuals, Dr. Nwaeke to my right and Barrister Ekwegbalu to my left. They are both well versed in Igbo history, Nigerian history, and most importantly, Biafran history. As we see the events going on, it is important that we bring out some of these issues and educate ourselves, those who were not around when the Biafra War and the events that led to it happened. I think it's important that we be educated and informed so that we know where we are coming from, where we are, and where we need to be going. But according to our tradition, this is our first broadcast in the year. Before we continue, the tradition requires that we break the collar for the benefit of those of us here and all of our audiences, both in Atlanta and across the world. So the kola nut does not understand the English language, so let me revert to Igbo. Because I hear with Oji, ka I mee omenala dịka ndị Igbo samaru. Onye okenye anyị anọ n'ụlọ bụ Dr. Biko, ya bụ ọjị onye anọ n'obi ya bụ wetara ka e wee waa ọjị ịnabata afọ ọfụ wee kpee ekpere yọọ ngọzi maka afọ anyị nọ n'ime ya. Ya bụ na biko ka anyị ka ị gaa n'iru inye wara anya bụ ọjị.
Kingsley daalụ ọjị onye anyị nọ bie ndị Igbo mma mmanụ ihe a na-ekwu ndị Igbo weta ọjị apatu okwu mana anyị enweghị taịm ịpatu nyawa okwu, so ihe a na-ekwu egbe ebere ugobere nkechi bie ebene nkụkwa anya na ndị be anyị na-achịchị kịta anya gosi ebe ọ ya ebe but nkụkwa anya maka na
onye ọjọọ nọrị n'obodo obodo adịghị adị mma,
so na nyawo ihe ka ọ dụwagodu na etu a anyị agbawa ọjị a anyị akpọ osebụla ụwa ya bịa na ihe edukete njọ ọdụwa mma anyị na-akpọku ya na ọ ya adụrụ ndị Igbo mma, dụrụ ndị Naijiria mma, dụrụ ụwa niile mma, maka na ejighị ihu takwutakwu eme echi ohe ma ọrụ ndị kwuru mgbe amị enweghị ihe eji ya niile eme na ihe dụrụ mmadụ niile mma, ọ dụrụ mmadụ niile mma ọsọ Chukwu ọbịa gọzie ụwa niile anyị adụ n'udo wee na-aga n'ihu, ma onye ihu ma onye azụ anyị na-aga n'ihu wedu mmanụ so ndewonu ngwanụ gbawanụ m ya ka m ga-ekiri ezi ọjị a were aka ọjị ndewonu
ị ga-ewere ọjị tinye
ọjị ruo ụlọ wee kọwa ibe ochi a ma etinu nke na-akpa nna ruo egwe nkọrọ ndị be m na nwere ibe njere
ya gaziere ọ dị ka nke ọgbara otu ịma na asị onye gara aṅara onye aṅara jere mba ọ bụta aṅara ụtụ gbara na ọwụ ndị mba nọ ka ọ na-anọchite anya ha. So aga m achọ iwere ọjị nke dị mma maka na nke ụtụ gbara ọ na-ebute ụkwara otu nna m gwara m
na-arụ ọfụ ị ga-ewere ihe dị mma wee bata
onye symbolically ka e wee na-aga
ọkwa ka m jidekwa ka oke m ghara ifu n'ọgbọ ewerugo m nke m ka ọ dị ka ewerugo m ose nyere ya
ka ntinye nke m na-agba ka anyị wee kwuo okwu gaba n'iru emesịsị ejiri m nwayọọ tawa. Biko ka anyị gaa n'iru n'ife gbasara nnọkọ anyị dịka anyị sikwu na mbụ ka anyị kara ka wee sụọ n'Igbo ka ndị na-adị anụ Igbo wee ghọta ife anyị na-ekwu. Once again, I say welcome to everybody. To kickstart our conversation this morning about the history of Biafra, Dr. Nwaeke, if you don't mind me starting with you, could you give us a brief history about your involvement with Biafra in the 1960s?
Yeah, let me start this way. Once I was asked to say something extraordinary about myself, I said, well, I was born under the British flag, went to school under the Nigerian flag, fought the war under the Biafran flag, went to university under the Nigerian flag, and now I'm an American citizen. I'm a dual citizen. What about Biafra? Long ago, somebody wrote about Biafra that if your family says that in order to be in peace, that they must kill you, then you have no business belonging to that family. That's what happened. That's how Biafra came about, because all of a sudden, in 1966, there was a coup that sent home these civilians and installed the military. And there was a counter coup. And this counter coup killed a lot of very good people. Typically, the General JTU Johnson Thomas Unoaku Ekwegbalu was murdered. And all of a sudden, they started killing people from the south mostly, but mostly the Igbos were the targets. And we were receiving our brothers and sisters, and they'll cut off the head, throw the body into the train, and the train will bring them back. They will stop, cut children from their mother's womb, throw them in the train. And we didn't understand what was going on. What was it all about? So when that happened, we said, okay, well, we have no business being part of a country like this. But at some point, we went to Aburi to see whether we can find a way forward in spite of what has happened. Of all after reaching some accords that things we were going to do in order to see whether we can go forward, when they came back, we in Biafra had all the things that were said. It doesn't appear to me that anybody in Nigeria had any of these things, because since the war ended, they are talking as if none of that happened. I don't think the country was interested in allowing them hear these things. The person that was representing the eastern Nigeria was, Dim Odumegwu Ojukwu, a 36-year-old then. Those of you who can imagine what a 36-year-old can do. But it wasn't his war. He didn't go out and say, okay, let me go and fight these people. The Consultative Assembly, all of Igbo people and all of the Eastern Nigeria got together at University of Nigeria in Nsukka. And after a lot of consultation, they decided that they were going to secede from the rest of Nigeria, which they did. And when they did that, then was a question of what were we going to do. And the Aburi Accord happened, and we thought things will begin to cool down then. But no, we were attacked. Okay, and so that's how, if anybody comes and tells you, I am going to kill you, what do? You see how you defend yourself. And so, as far as we are concerned, we were trying to defend ourselves. But in hindsight, people are now saying, why did we go to war? Well, I don't think we had any choice. In the Igbo language, we say that the only thing that if you tell it you're going to kill it and it stands in one place, is a tree. We are human beings. Self-preservation is the first instinct, is the first law of, I mean, if you say you are going to kill me, if I can remove myself from there, I will remove myself. Otherwise, if I'm already home, I'm going to defend myself. And so that's how we got into this pickle. And, well, we fought the war for 3 years. We stood against the might of Nigerian, Egyptian.
Excuse me, Doctor.
Yes.
I don't mean to cut you off, but I just want to save some of the points because we have later questions that will address those issues in the future. And as much as I would like to moderate this, I also want to be a little more objective. You mentioned that during the counter coup, they killed a lot of good people. And you mentioned JTU Ironsi, the general. And I also think it's important not to be too one-sided, to mention that in the first coup, they also killed a lot of people, quite a few people from the other side, including the Saduana of Sokoto, Amadou Bello, and Tafawa Balewa, the then prime minister.
Yes.
So that said, both coups were very bloody in a way that were not good for the unity of the country. But so we'll come back to some of the issues shortly.
Okay.
And Barrister, you're itching to say something.
Yes, okay. I just wanted to go back a little to the January 15 coup. It was a happenstance that those that were to take care of those in the East did actually not perform. The man that was sent to the North managed to succeed and kill those that they had already mapped out to be killed. But the man that came to the East, Ejo, from Delta State, I don't know, he bunked the plans and didn't get Okpara. Okay. So that was how it came about. They said it's an Igbo coup. It was actually not an Igbo coup. Because the people that got together, Igbo, Yoruba, they agreed that Nigeria was going in the wrong direction.
Okay.
And that was why they had the coup. So on May 30, 1967, because after the consultation he talked about, the then head of Eastern region, Ojukwu, seceded on May 30 and declared Biafra a country of his own. So on July 6, Nigeria came in what Gowon claimed was going to be a 2-day affair to reclaim, crush Biafra.
Police action.
And that two-day affair spread into 3 years because of what I will term the Biafran spirit.
Okay, please let me pause you for a little bit. I'm getting very, very excited. You are dropping dates like like you're a piece of encyclopedia. January 15th, May 30th, July 6th.
Yes.
All pertaining to history of Nigeria and history of Biafra. Mm-hmm. Now, at what level were you involved with the movement or with whatever was going on, to the extent that these dates are so etched in your memory?
I was a girl at war.
Okay.
And then I had just left secondary school, itching to get into the university. So I was taking note of the happenings then.
Okay.
So when the war continued, I joined the Voice of Biafra.
Okay.
And then we moved. We had to move to Osuihitokwa by Koto to Market. That was where we broadcast from this library vans. That was the Voice of Biafra studio. In fact, when the war ended, And Aseka came there. He said, this is real Biafra ingenuity. Because from there, we broadcast 24 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, I was a studio manager there.
Okay.
And then Okokondem. We worked with Okokondem. From Calabar. And he was the one that was really needling Nigeria. They said, what's happening? Because the propaganda unit was strong.
Okay, thank you very much. So you were a broadcast journalist in Radio Biafra.
Yeah, I was a studio manager. Sometimes I presented programs there. In fact, when Omoahia fell to the federal troops, I was on duty that night. But I stayed in the studio broadcasting until morning. You know, when you're young, sometimes you don't know what is fear.
Thank you very much for being here.
But that Biafran spirit, that was what made Biafra survive. When the crude oil...
we will get there. And I just want to let some of you in the audience who might have been struck by some of the things she said, know how humbling it is to me personally to sit down here with this lady. She is a piece of history, and I feel privileged that I'm sitting next to someone who walked hand in hand with Okokondem. And Okokondem is a character that looms very large in the history of Biafran movement. But not to sidetrack ourselves from what we are talking about, I want to thank you once again for being here. It's really a privilege to have you. And we recorded
the Biafran Anthem.
Okay, very good.
I was singing with the Freedomers.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so let me go to you, Okebugu. I believe you were around during the Biafra War. Where were you in the scheme of things, both physically? Where were you?
I didn't have much history about Biafra because I was like a child. I think I was about 9 years old, so
okay.
I didn't know much about it. I only found out that my eldest brother joined the Biafran troops.
Okay.
And he never came back.
Yeah.
So when Unoaku felt like Barrister said, we ran to Ojukwu. We were in the forest for about 2 weeks. It was pouring down rain, and my mother was trying to run along with 7 children. My father had already died fighting in Calabar, so I couldn't. The only thing I remember was that we kept running until we ended up in Ojukwu. We had nowhere to go, and that was where they came and told us the war was over.
Okay.
We were able to find ourselves back. Our villages were burnt down to ashes, and
January 12th.
Yeah. When we came back, we settled in Ariam. There's a place called Ariamelu. It's a marketplace. That was where all of us settled because we had no villages anymore. The federal troops burned down the whole of our area because they had a lot of resistance. So, as a child, we were having a good time. I didn't even know people died. So, I don't have much to talk about Biafra.
Well, you have. You just told me that your mother had 7 children that she had to fend for by herself. You lost your dad. You lost your senior brother.
That was the only experience I had. About fighting and the rest of them. I didn't know much about it, but from there on, we became refugees. That's how we ended up in a market square for almost 30 days before we were able to find a family to go and stay with.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. And where exactly was your village?
I am from, for those who know where Government College Umuahia is, from if you go into Ikorekbene, we have a common boundary with Akwa Ibom. My village is called Ekpiri Oyike.
Okay.
We are surrounded by, actually in the south, it's Akwa Ibom.
Okay.
You go through if you go west, we are next to, there are villages around there that all makes up Iguano.
Okay.
And so my own small hamlet, where I came from, is one of the most prominent villages in Iguano.
Okay. That's it, where
Ekpiri.
Ekpiri, okay.
Ekpiri.
Okay.
Okay, and that's where my actual, this is how I get very connected to Nsukka.
Okay.
Because Dr. Sabaka lectured in Nsukka for several years.
Okay, thank you very much.
So,
Dr. Nweke, coming back to you.
Yes.
I understand that you were one of the foot soldiers. You have just given us a brief a synopsis, if you don't mind, of the politics that led to the Civil War. When the war broke out, could you tell me, or tell our audience, where were you?
Well, when the war broke out, I was in lower six. When you finish, we were the last set to take the school certificate, or Cambridge, like you used to call them, before the war, just like her. And the thing was, we were now in lower six, getting ready to do the 2 years before you enter the university with direct entry. So we were there, and then there was this declaration, and there was the declaration of Biafra. I still remember that day when he was talking about the territorial waters of. By the way, what sits there's the Gulf of Guinea, and then there's the Gulf of Benin, and then Gulf of Biafra. That's the way it is. That is what is now known today as Gulf of Bonny, which I find silly, because there was a people named Biafrans. This was long before Nigeria came about as an entity. And some people seem to forget that. And the thing that bothers me about the whole thing is that there was a lot achieved inside Biafra. If those of you who know how the Second World War was fought, in spite of how bad a man that Hitler turned out to be, he gave them Volkswagen. Because he said that anybody from the so-called Aryan race should ride in a wagon. And so he commissioned Dr. Porsche to design that. But unfortunately in Biafra, all the things we achieved, there was a massive effort to kill all of those things. We were driving our own tanks. We were using our own landmines, which we called Ogbunigwe. We were doing all of these things. Okay, fine. If we lost the war, what did we recover from the technological advancements that happened during that war? It was not until Ezekwe, who was who did the Ogbunigwe, was almost an old man, down and out, that they called him to found Proda. Okay? Proda should have been formed right away. After all, even in this country, the United States, the people who made the first atomic bomb were people who were extracted from Germany. And the thing is, we, in trying to kill Biafra, we killed a lot of all these technological advancement. Can you imagine that in 3 years' time, we had our own rockets, we had our own grenades, we had our own tanks, we made these things. They didn't work very well, but when under good shepherd, if we had shepherded these things very well, by now, nobody in Africa will need to go anywhere to buy a tank. But in Nigeria, we threw all that away. You know, it's mind-boggling the things we did in trying to kill Biafra. As a minimum, let's return the name Gulf of Biafra. Biafra is not coming to eat anybody. But, you know, I mean, all these things in trying to kill Biafra, we killed a lot of things that were achieved in that time.
Okay, I think, sorry again, it will take a very ambitious
it will.
political effort to try to.
Let me just say one
change.
more thing.
Okay.
When they killed Agui Irunsi, he was in the house of the governor of the West, who refused that you're not going to kill him in my house, and so they killed the man too. Fajuyi. I mean, it was, you know, I had a lot of respect for Fajuyi, somebody who said, you don't kill this man in my house. You can't do that. That's our African thing. That, you know, nobody, before anybody kills a stranger in your house, if they want to do it, they have to come through you. And yet, we did that. So we should all be ashamed about what we did during that war. Or, if you take the stance that however you win the war, provided you win the war. Well, that's how a lot of the good men I talked about were killed. The idea was not to kill them, by the way. The idea was to arrest them. When they got to the north, Sadlana of Sokoto resisted. And so they had to meet force with force because they had these guards. By the way, Ejo was appointed governor. He wasn't the person sent to do the thing to do the coup in the eastern region. The person that was tapped to do that went on a course, and they had to have a substitute. And there was a lot of confusion. Anyway, we are going to come back to how all this happened. It is mind-boggling to think that how we started and got to where we are now. And when you look at the whole thing, even when I went to my to Ilori to do my youth corps, I found out that Alhaji Sulu Gambari of Ilori, the emir of Ilori, protected a lot of Igbos. And when the war ended, he said, okay, now you can go. Nobody knew they were there. Yep. The same story about the emir of Kanu and all of this. So the story is not a very straightforward one. I mean, there was some deep humanity shown. As a matter of fact, you know, till today, till the last emir of Kano died, he was very grateful to Odumegwu Ojukwu because he was the person who stopped them from coming to Kano. And because when they finished in Kaduna, they saw that there wasn't any money in Kaduna, so they thought they would go to Kano where the money is.
Okay, thank you.
And in doing that, they found out something else.
But I know that if I let you go, you can.
Yeah,
you can go
please.
endlessly.
Through the history,
so we will continue to come to you, but let me ask a brief question to Barrister Ekwegbalu.
Yeah.
As a young woman, you had your aspirations to go to the university after secondary school or high school.
Yes.
In the 60s when the war broke out.
Yes.
And you ended up in the broadcasting house of Radio Biafra as a studio manager and sometimes a broadcaster. Now, I assume you did not live in the compounds of the broadcast house in the studio. So sometimes you went to home, you were on the streets, you experienced the war firsthand.
Of course.
What was it like?
Yeah, for a girl at war, it was really tough because if you are single, the people will come around and say, we will take care of you. And because of the hardship,
Okay.
many
Especially if it
for
was
the
a
young
nice-looking
girls,
girl like you.
So those that joined the war, some of the girls got attracted to these people that they could at least provide a sardine, all the good things that were scarce then, because kwashiorkor set in. I'm from Agolo, and my parents, my father died just before the war broke out. So my mother, we ran from Agolo and went to Ezinifite. But when I started work, I had to go down to Umuahia. From Umuahia, we moved to Ekototo. We stayed a little at Aba. From there to Ekototo, where they call Ekototo.
Okay.
That's where Voice of Biafra moved to. And by then, I had a fiancé, Edwin Ekwegbalu, of blessed memory. So on his own part, he was a civil engineer. So he was among those that were building the airports at Uli. And then Oga, because there's a stretch at Oga that was used. And the place Nengwa, Nteya. They were at Nteya and going to some of these places. So another problem you had to contend with was the bombing. It could come anytime. But there was a sort of spirit that was leading me then. Like the day they came to Umuahia, I traveled out. So I was telling the people I was with, I said, thank God I'm going back by 2 p.m. They must have finished bombing. They said, this is your dream, but it really happened. It really happened. So when the bombs come, you don't even know who will survive. There was actually a day, somebody beside me it landed on her finger. So it was a day, every day you are surviving, you say, thank God. But the innovative spirit of the Biafrans was something else. Because when you talk about shoes, girls had to wear shoes and the other thing. But when we didn't see the imported ones, what people did was to use tire.
Cut tires.
They cut tire, made shoes from it. When there was no oil for cars, they used coconut milk to make refine it to oil. And then the shell, they moved from Port Harcourt to Amandoba, but they still continued. So what actually happened was some of the girls, when you go to the relief center, because some of the families were really large. Like I was saying, I was happy I didn't have any child to contend with. I was just catering for myself and my family. So when you get salt, you will take some back to your family. Or if you get press for money, you can sell it. But what most of us avoided was falling to the generals and captains that were promising you heaven and earth if you marry them. So because some of these marriages after the war, those they married, some found the captain or major or general was a school dropout, did not even with standard 6. And then it was begin again for them. But actually, I got married, I wedded 2 months to the end of the war. I wedded in October 1969 because, like I told you, I was in my last year when I met my fiancé.
Okay.
So the managing director of Voice of Biafra called me and said, is it because of the war you are marrying? I said, no, this is no win the war love. I had known him because I was determined not to be caught in the web of marrying or taking a mess of pottage, yes. So it was actually a good time to test your spirit.
Okay.
And the young people, many that kept faith did not regret it. But some that just said, let's have some good thing to eat today, they live to regret it.
Okay.
So it was tough for the youths.
Okay, let me come back to you, Engineer Dr. Nweke. Now, she mentioned something that I think you might give us. I don't know if you were an engineer during the war or if you went to school, okay, after the war. But do you have any experiences in some of the things that she mentioned? She said that they were able to refine oil from coconut, produce fuel from coconut oil. What are some of the other innovative developments that you can point out to us that the Biafra people had to invent in order to survive during the war?
A lot of things. There was a lot of rethinking because, for instance, you should ask yourself, for instance, why it is that we have to have duty on wine and all of these things. Those duties were imposed to discourage people
from importing.
From not just importing, but to discourage the indigenous producers of the same thing from making their own, because the colonial masters told us that what they were doing was inferior to theirs. Mm-hmm. So this time we said, okay, Kai is now Biafran gin, and so we started drinking from things distilled from all kinds of ways, not just palm wine,
water,
even cassava and all of that. We started refining oil, crude oil.
Okay.
And initially, it was not very good. But by the end of the war, this thing was as good as anything you can find today. And the thing that bothers me about it is that if we had gotten behind that effort then, by today, we don't need to go anywhere to bring anybody to build refineries for us, because that refinery was working. Mm-hmm. But all in the name of killing Biafra, we threw all that away. What my sister here was saying about things, generally, people at war wanted to have a company of any type, and they were out prowling. And, during war and all of that, if you don't think the law is going to come after you, and you see a young lady that you like, many a time they were jumped on. And it was a skill to stay out of these things. And so, Madam, I want to congratulate you because there was a lot of rape. Even reverend sisters were raped. And so there was a lot of atrocities going on. But putting all that aside, from the interest of this country now, Nigeria, they should have capitalized on some of the technological achievements that we made then. We waited until most of the people who this thing died, and then here comes product. The people who populate product today can't even begin to, because there was a lot of thought. There was a Professor Ragu or Dr. Ragu or Mr. Ragu then. He taught me physics in Nsukka when I entered. He was put in charge of research and production. And that thing had all kinds of people doing all kinds of things. to support the war effort. Like I suggested to you, Odumegwu came out of that. All the things for fighting wars like tanks came out of that. 2 years in 1972, Professor Nwabara then assembled all these things to show what we fought the war with. And by the time I got there in 2008, all that had been scattered, all in the name of we don't want to be reminded of Biafra. Well, I mean, we, like my sister is suggesting here, we threw the baby out with the bath water. What people do typically is say, okay, this was a bad man, he did this, but you harvest all the technological advancement that happened as a result. So today, if you enter public housing, by the way, you should be grateful to Hitler himself, because he had the Uncha housing. And where people who couldn't afford it were being housed. He came up with the Volkswagen. He came up with, Dr. Porsche, the person who...
Ferdinand Porsche.
Ferdinand Porsche. Okay. So, but in our case, we threw out everything just to make sure that Biafra doesn't rise again. In 1976, Nsukka would have had aerospace engineering. Because right after the war, in 1974, a Professor Tokati, who used to be the science advisor for Joseph Stalin, the Joseph Stalin of Russia. Okay? They shipped him over to London, and they said, okay, we have this department here, come and head it. He was head of mechanical. And the first thing he did, he's a Russian Jew, he took a complete gas turbine engine and landed in Nsukka. And said, next year, I am going to send a Mr. Shiborelsky. I remember that name, I don't know why. I'm going to send him to section this in so that when you are learning gas turbine engines, you then can see it in action. And that thing is still there today on section. Why? Because somebody said, if you let these people go into aerospace engineering, very soon they'll be bombing us again. Why? Who said? I mean, the structure to do that wasn't there anymore. But it's all in the name of killing Biafra. Killing Biafra. But you can't kill Biafra because there is a history. There were some people who were the Biafrans.
That's exactly why we are here. And thank you, Dr. Nweke. For the benefit of those of our audience who are viewing from Atlanta or from other parts of the world, if you want to come in to contribute to the program, the phone numbers to call are 770-212-9518 and 770-212-9519. And if you're just joining us, this is a conversation here at Omega Studio International, Atlanta, where we are broadcasting live this Saturday afternoon. And again, I have here with me, to my right, Dr. Nweke, to my left, Barrister Ekwegbalu, and to the extreme left, Ujoma Ndibo. Now, to highlight some of the things we have discussed, this conversation is centered actually on helping the younger generation appreciate the history of Biafra, because as you are all aware, over the past few months, there have been several demonstrations going on across Nigeria, agitating for, on one hand, the release of the broadcaster or the director of Radio Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, and on the other hand, for the actualization of Biafra. Some of the people have taken these demonstrations so seriously that they have risked their lives, and some have unfortunately lost their lives demonstrating for one reason or the other. And there are questions coming up: what is Biafra, and where does the current movement factor into or fit into the overall the larger picture concerning the history of Biafra? So that is why I brought here with me to the studio. And I have to mention again that we have the privilege of talking with two outstanding individuals who are part of the history of Biafra. To my right, Dr. Nweke fought as a soldier in Biafra, and to my left, Barrister Ekwegbalu was a broadcaster at Radio Biafra during the war. And
Voice of Biafra.
Yeah, the voice of Biafra.
Yeah, which was broadcasting internationally.
Thank you for the correction. Voice of Biafra.
Yes.
So you were the director at the Radio Biafra.
Not director. I
Studio manager.
Manager and then presenter.
Okay, studio manager and presenter. Thank you once again. So you mentioned a few things which I would also like for you to highlight, because many times when we talk about Biafra, we give bits and pieces of the history without being able to connect a lot of things. And to some people, the only thing they know is that they lost an uncle or a great uncle or some family member during the war. But actually, going through the details of how those who survived were able to survive, and how those who fought were able to prosecute the war, some of that is lost or is being lost.
Okay,
so,
coming in there.
Yeah, I want to ask you something specifically. You used an expression which caught my attention: "Win the war, love." I think you mentioned that you used that expression in connection with what sounds like a case of sexual exploitation of young women by soldiers, or taking advantage of the vulnerability of some young women during the war.
Yes.
And then, what was it like for you personally to struggle with those circumstances and to hold your head high and not fall victim to win the war, love?
I attributed it to my upbringing. Now, I had a father who was a teacher. So from childhood, once you start school, he would say, go and read Matthew 7:12. As you would that others should do to you, do ye also unto them likewise. And then he set out to train people that will be independent in thinking. There were many girls. There were 8 of us girls. But instead of policing us, don't go there. But he didn't make the male a curiosity factor. I had 2 brothers. But
Okay.
you know, when you say, don't talk to that boy, somebody will start wondering, why shouldn't I talk to a boy? And you get curious. And maybe when you start talking, the boy might take advantage. But when you see the boy as just an individual, when we were in the secondary school, when they give us the form, where will she spend her midterm or holidays? My father will return as she likes it, because he knew that if you say you're going to Umuahia, you're going to Umuahia. You're not going to branch at Aba or anywhere. And that's what I want some parents to understand, that you are on your child's neck will not make that child good if the child will not be good. So when the advances started coming from men, I knew where I came from. And because my father, my mother, they had let us know what life is. And when I was in secondary school, my father wrote a letter and said, please take care of yourself. But if you make any mistake, there's enough room in the house. So I laughed, but it was a very, so I decided I will not even make that mistake. I will not abuse that privilege. It was a privilege given to a young person. So I was able to withstand the advances. One man advised me, don't put all your eggs into one basket. You say you have a fiancé, but you can try others. I said, there's no need to try others. So it was something that, and the activities I joined to, I was in the Freedomers with Nwaokolo Biago. We recorded, we were singing to encourage our soldiers, and we recorded the national anthem, which I can even sing now if you want me to.
The Biafran national anthem.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
It's
Okay.
a history.
Okay.
Land of the rising sun we love and cherish, beloved home, land of our great heroes. We must defend our lives, or we shall perish. We must defend our heads from all our foes. But if the prize is death for all we hold dear, then let us die without a shred of fear. So that is what we call the Biafran spirit. The Biafran spirit. So
we are living through history.
when that is there, you will know that the life must continue, but you must continue positively. So that's what like Dr. Nwaeke said, Nigeria has been fighting Biafra, but you cannot kill the spirit. That is, you can say there's nothing, but I even went to see the bite of Biafra at Ibno in Eket. That's where you just go and say that is bite of Biafra. So what we are advising the young people, when Biafrans went to war, or when they were forced into war, because actually they were forced into the war. When Ojukwu declared on the 30th of May that Biafra had become a nation, if they had left Biafra alone, there could have been no war. But Nigeria said, no, you cannot secede. We must bring you back. So they were actually forced into the war. And like he said again, it's only a tree that will stand when somebody says, I'm coming to kill you. But what we have to learn is that we all make mistakes. Nigeria made that mistake of thinking that you cannot subdue a wounded man. It's a wounded man was the one, like you come to the train, you see a head, you see this. So many families were traumatized during that period. But that was why, in spite of the fact that Britain and all the world powers were helping Nigeria, Biafra was able to withstand it for 3 good years. And when it ended on January 12, 1970, Biafrans were again ready to pick up their lives. That was when they came with the one of all is fair in war and everything, and subjected Biafrans to receiving only 20 pounds. People who carry...
Let me please pause you a little bit. We will come to that. Again, thank you for that beautiful rendition of the Biafran National Anthem. I've never heard it before. And then what a privilege it is not only to hear it today, but to hear it from someone who was part of the people who recorded the original version during that very difficult time. So, Barrister Ekwegbalu, thank you very much. And once again, let me highlight to the audience who are listening, if you have any contribution to make to the conversation or have any question, please you can dial the phone number 770-212-9518. or 770-212-9519. You were going into the topic of what happened after the war. A lot of things happened, which I don't think we can touch on today. But there's a lot of pressure on our time, especially you, Dr. Nwaeke. I know that you have an engagement coming up. But before we round up today, let me just have each one of you tell our children and the audience a little bit about what happened after the war. Not in the details, but as it concerned education, because what we are trying to do is to teach our history to our children. Now, after the Civil War, most of you went to school at various levels. Okebugu, you said you were young. I guess you started at elementary school after the war.
Yeah,
so, how much of Biafran history was part of the history curriculum in Nigerian schools that you learned?
Actually, zero.
Zero.
There was no curriculum for Biafra. We just went back to school. I think in 1960. I started primary school in 1966.
Okay. And
that was in Cross River, where we lived with our parents, and the war came and the school stopped there.
Okay, so after the war, you went back to school.
We went back. That was 1973.
And there was no aspect of Biafran history discussed as part of the curriculum.
Nobody came up with that, and we just went through school and did normal civics.
Okay.
And the history was British history and West Africa.
Interesting.
Nobody mentioned anything. If I might add to what Doc was saying, I don't want to digress. Is I believe what happened to all these technologies that Doc is talking about. When people are out of war and they're trying to survive, the Igbos split all over the places. There was no way to put these people back together. Everybody, like my uncle was Professor Sabaka in Soka, he was in Amimo, in the lab, building some of these things. So
okay.
I know when he took me to visit him in Amimo, then there were other professors like Kereke in Soka too. All of them were there. That, as a young kid, I still remember those names even when I came back to Soka. So there was no Biafran history of any type. The only thing that is alive now is Ojukwu bunker in Umuahia, and there's not much to see there. For those who haven't visited Umuahia, if you go to Umuahia, ask for Ojukwu bunker.
It's part of the Biafran War museum.
Yes.
So that's the only thing that is existing now. I don't know if there is any other place.
Okay.
Barrister is here, Doc is here. There might be places that we don't know.
Okay, let me ask Barrister. Did you go back to school in Nigeria after the war?
I did go back.
Okay. Was there any aspect of the things that happened in the war that were part of the history?
It remained in the spirit.
Okay.
It remained in the spirit because when the war ended, the declaration was made that if you had 1 million naira Biafra money, because during the war we came up with Biafra currency.
Mm-hmm.
So you will be given 20 pounds to start life again. So most families, the ones that didn't have much during the war were the lucky ones, because if you brought 50 Biafra currency, they gave you 20 pounds. If you brought 10,000, they gave you 20 pounds.
Okay,
so
that would be the...
people started life again.
All over.
But like I was telling you, I just got married before the war ended. So when the war ended, I had a child, but I said I will not end there. So even though I had those children, I still went ahead to the university.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you very much. Dr. Nwaeke, we started with you, and we will round up with your closing remarks. What, in your opinion, you have already had highlighted some, was the goal of the Nigerian government in trying to not teach Biafran history or the aspect of what happened between Nigeria and Biafra as part of the history in the school curriculum. What would you think was the goal?
When they brought slaves here, the first thing they did was to make sure that they cannot speak their language. Let them speak something that everybody understands.
Okay.
Colonial people want you to not be able to communicate with each other. They don't want you even to know that you had a history. For instance, when we were going to school, there was a song we were singing about the Ashantis.
Mm-hmm.
It goes like this: good morning, Mr. Joe. Good morning to you, sir. I want to tell you about the Ashanti war. The people of Ashanti, they have no sense. When you give them just a blow, they cry, no. Now, I have learned that these people gave them tough time. In fact, it is entirely possible that they learned, the mother of parliament that you are talking about in Britain was learned from the Ashantis.
Mm.
But they wanted to present so that everybody will think everything started with them. It didn't. They just borrowed something and perfected it. And that's what I am hoping that Nigeria will keep doing. If you see somebody who's doing better than you, if there is anything to copy from him, copy and complete what you have. Instead, the ministers, the people who came, first of all, the evangelists came, and they were interested in making sure we throw away all our structures and become little English people. Mm-hmm. But as time goes on, your nature reasserts itself, because there are many ways of skinning a cat. Mm-hmm. I need to tell you a little bit about when we got back to Nsukka in 1970. I dropped my gun and they picked up a pen, entered Nsukka. The person who was teaching us fluid mechanics, I learned a whole lot of fluid mechanics from him. I'm very grateful to him. But he was the remnant of the Egyptian Air Force. We didn't know at the time. But he taught us fluid mechanics. Because they thought of what to do with this man, they said, okay, go and teach them that. It was behind him that we would have built the aerospace engineering. But somebody said, if you let them do that, they will rise again. Who's rising? For what? And the point is, we lost a lot of opportunities as a result of that. And the catastrophe for Igbos was that our elders died. They did not arrange for proper succession. Our elders, whose properties were seized, died. And so, I mean, all the abandoned properties in Port Harcourt, no, hang on. Because there was abandoned properties in the south, where we have Christians. In the north, they returned everything. It is a paradox that people have to deal with. The Muslims returned our property. In the case of my father, he sold his land. They called him to come and take his land, said, look, we collected this much rent, we use this, and come and take back your property. He said, well, I sold it to this man, and just write to him, he'll come and so the man went and recovered his property. The abandoned property problem was in the south, among we so-called Christians. And we need to say that, please.
We have a caller. Good afternoon. This is Omega Studio International. Who are we speaking with? Hello.
Hello. Casey.
Yes, this is Obin Joku from Omega Studio International. How are you?
I'm fine. I wanted to see the program. Did it start as emailed? I just saw the message now.
Yeah, we are rounding up. Who are we speaking with, please?
My name is Professor
Professor
Oranika Okechukwu.
Okay.
In Atlanta.
Yes, Oranika, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Yes, that means it sounds like you have not been following us. We have been broadcasting live over the past hour and a half, and we are actually rounding up. But we give you a brief, a few minutes to make a comment.
Okay, with respect to the Biafra thing?
Yes, we are talking about the history of Biafra, not the politics, but the goal and the aim is to bring out some of the things that happened during the war and after the war as it relates to Igbo people and their history, because we think that it will be a disservice to the next generation if they don't know some of these things about our past history, or if they know it in passing without being well grounded in this history. So if you have, what is your thought? I mean, not.
Well, you also said you don't want political side of it, right?
It's not
the historical.
Yeah, we are starting with the historical. We are not into politics yet.
I see. Well, I think pretty much everybody knows what happened with respect to issues that led to the development of the Biafran War, and it all started with political instability in Western Nigeria, which most people don't even relate the problem to the anarchy that was going on in Western Nigeria. Following independence, the eastern part of the country was very peaceful and economically doing well, thanks to the leaders we had at that time, Nnamdi Kanu, the Premier, Kanu, and Chief Michael Opara, and the rest of them. So the East was doing well. Unfortunately, the crisis in the West and also in some areas of the North, led to the anarchy that developed. And the military in and took over power. But there was a misconception that the military was largely an Igbo thing, and but there were other people that were part of the coup. But everybody concluded that it was just an Igbo coup, and only Igbo civilian administrators were spared, while others were, killed. And, so it fed to people's emotions, and before you know it, every Igbo person in northern Nigeria was being rounded up and, slaughtered like goods, and, even pregnant women were, their stomachs were ripped open and baby inside brought out and killed, and the mother, so it led to Igbos moving back to the East. And, but of course, there were efforts to, resolve the problem and assure Igbos that they will still be secured in Nigeria. Please let me know if I'm going off track here.
No, you have a few. Okay, you can go ahead. I have in the next 30 seconds.
Sure. But anyway, it all led to a Buri Accord, attended by Biafran reps and Nigerian government, and they agreed on, working out a confederation-based government. But when Gowon came back to Nigeria, they reneged on it, and there was no other option other than Biafra having to move in direction of independence. So that's what produced the war.
Okay,
Which
I have
ended in 1970.
Yeah, I have two guests. Yeah, okay, thank you very much, sir. I have two guests here. Barrister Ekwegbalu, Barrister Mrs. Unoaku Ekwegbalu. She is here with me in the studio. She was a journalist and studio manager at the Voice of Biafra, and she's here giving us some very interesting details about the history. And also we have Dr. Ernest Nwaeke. He also fought as a soldier in Biafra, and he has been an educator across Nigeria, so he is also well versed in the history. And Dr. Nwaeke would like to respond to you now. Okay.
Yes, Professor Ranika, I think we have met before. I just want to have you perhaps confirm or deny the fact that the story about that war isn't as straightforward as some people would want it to be, because we just finished about abandoned properties, and it's only in the south, in Port Harcourt, in Lagos, that we had that issue among the so-called Christians. But in the north, people were able to recover their properties. And some people will think that you are holding brief for those who oppressed us, but that's not the case. There were things that happened that you cannot really explain in terms of those are enemies and here we are. And so the thing is, when we talk about this war, we sometimes do not give enough credit for the Akwa Ibom people who were together with us through thick and thin.
Okay.
And so it is important that we also say that, so that it wouldn't. After all, the chief of staff of the Biafran army was Effiong.
Yes.
And an Akwa Ibom man, and so and nobody can downplay what what's it, the imperial son of darkness, what's his name again?
The broadcaster?
No, not the
You're referring to General Effiong?
no, not General Effiong. It's a young man.
Adekunle?
No, I'm not talking about Adekunle. He's an Akwa Ibom man, and he led a brigade. And whenever they are throwing bombs at him, he keeps going. He says, not for me and not for my boys. And they were...
Okay, so please...
and so we need to give credit where credit is due.
Okay,
in my battalion, there was an Akpan. Whenever everybody has run, Akpan is still there.
Okay, Doctor.
Okay,
thank you very much. Thank you very much. We have Dr. Ranika. Please, thank you for your contributions, and we look forward to our next episode.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Thank you, sir. Audience, we have to round up at this point. Dr. Nwaeke, thank you very much. The time obviously is too short for you, and so we will continue from where we stopped.
Yeah, just a word before I say, the spirit should continue. That spirit of knowing who you are, knowing where you are going, And for Nigerians to realize that Igbos are actually, they are friends. Because every part of Nigeria, you must find Igbos there. They said, if you say Kedo, in anywhere you don't find an Igbo man, it's just like going to a place and you don't find vulture. There must be evil there. Because once somebody will answer Kedu, the Igbos can lead us to the promised land if we take their hands and work with them.
Okay.
And then we realize that we haven't gathered the history of the past. Now is the time.
Okay.
It's not falling that is the issue.
Thank you.
When you fall, you get up and move on.
By the way, the name was Major Archibald.
Okay. Thank you very
Very
much.
brave man.
Okay, Ugu, please. Okay. Yes, thank you for your time. And you want to say a word of conclusion?
Thank you so much. I thank Professor Nwaeke and Barrister. Not much because time is already up, but the problem of our problem as the Igbos is leadership. When we had leaders, that is when the Igbos were moving forward as a group. But at this time, the leaders that we have are all just about for themselves. And so we don't have leaders. The moment the Igbos are able to produce a leader, maybe things will change. That's our problem. You remember Premier Okpara? Okpara was there for Igbo. Mbakwe came in our own generation, was there, became a crying governor for Igbo. So since we don't have those kind of people in that spirit anymore, that's where we're having problems.
Or we don't accept anybody. We should learn to accept.
Okay, okay. Thank you all very much. We are running out of time, please. Time. Thank you very much, and we look forward to the next episode, please. Thank you all again, once again, for contributing, and thank you all the viewers for watching the program today, and we look forward to the next episode. And the engineer, Omega Studio International, as always, Omeka, thank you very much for giving us this platform to express ourselves as a people. And we see that you're already preparing your son Chinedu to follow in your footsteps, and that is in line with what we are doing here. A bit of history should continue. It shouldn't die with one generation. So on behalf of everybody here, I thank you all very much. Goodbye for now.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank
Bye.
you.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay.